Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, I started hearing footsteps in my room, but only when I closed my eyes is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end, if you dare. I realized I'd started doing it without thinking, holding my breath the moment I shut my eyes. Not in a dramatic way, not like a kid hiding under a blanket, just a small pause in my chest, a reflex like bracing for cold water. Because the footsteps were back. I lay flat on my back with the sheet pulled to my waist. The room dim, except for the blue digital numbers on the microwave clock in the kitchen. 2:11. The radiator pinged once, old metal expanding, contracting. Somewhere downstairs, a neighbor's TV murmured through the floor, a laugh track dampened like it had been wrapped in a towel. Normal building noises, normal city noises. Then I closed my eyes. 3 steps, not loud, not a stomp, more like the sound of a socked foot finding the squeaky patch on hardwood, then avoiding it. A soft scuff-scuff, pause scuff. Close enough that my skin reacted anyway. Not goosebumps, just that tightening behind my ribs, like my body was doing math faster than my brain. I opened my eyes. Nothing moved. My ceiling fan hung still. The bookshelf in the corner stayed a dark block against the wall. The door was shut the way I always left it, latched, but not deadbolted, because who deadbolts themselves in a 3rd-floor studio and calls it healthy? The faint streetlight leaking through my blinds painted bars across the floor. I closed my eyes again. 2 steps this time, and a little drag at the end, like someone's heel had caught. My phone sat face down on the mattress beside me. I slid my hand over it and flipped it up. The screen lit my fingers an ugly white. No notifications, no missed calls, just the time and my own reflection in the glass, eyes too wide for someone who'd promised himself an early night. I told myself very calmly that I was exhausted, that my downstairs neighbor was pacing, that the building was settling, that I'd done enough doom scrolling about insomnia and auditory hallucinations to be dangerous to myself. I was still telling myself this when my thumb hit the flashlight icon out of habit, flooding the room with a narrow beam. The light didn't change anything, which somehow made it worse. I sat up, careful, the way you sit up when you've convinced yourself you might have a back problem, even though you're 31, and sit at a desk like a question mark all day. The sheet slid off my lap. My feet found the rug. The cold came up through it anyway. I held the flashlight low and swept it across the floor. Nothing. No shadow where a shadow shouldn't be. No half-open closet door. No weird pile of clothes shaped like a crouched person. Just the same clutter I'd promised to deal with this weekend. 2 moving boxes still taped shut, my running shoes by the radiator, a mug on the windowsill I kept forgetting to bring to the sink. I stood, walked to the door, and pressed my ear against it. On the other side, the hallway smell of someone's garlic dinner and old paint, a building hum. Silence in the normal sense, quiet, not eerie. I could hear my own breathing too loudly. I turned the lock, click, just to feel like I'd done something. Then, because I hated myself a little, I walked back to bed and lay down again as if the whole thing hadn't happened. I closed my eyes, one step, right beside the bed. I opened my eyes so fast my contacts scraped, the room snapping into focus. The flashlight was still on, pointed at the ceiling. My heart was doing that dumb sprint-in-place thing. My mind filled in a shape next to the bed with ridiculous speed, like my brain wanted to be helpful and produce an explanation, any explanation. There was nothing there. I sat up hard enough the mattress squeaked and muttered, "Okay, okay." My own voice sounded too casual in the room, like I was trying to soothe a nervous dog. I didn't sleep after that. Not really. I did that thing where you drift for 90 seconds and jerk awake because you can't tell if the sound you heard was real or part of the drift. At one point, I must have dozed because I had a dream about my old apartment in Boston, the one with the leaky window, except the hallway was wrong, longer than it should have been, and I kept walking and never reached my door. When the light finally shifted from black to gray through the blinds, I gave up and got out of bed. The first cup of coffee tasted like burnt cardboard. I drank it anyway. I stood by the sink, staring at the dingy grout like it might give me a verdict. My name is Ethan Rowe, and I live in a studio apartment in Portland, Oregon, in a building that used to be offices before someone slapped in showers and called it urban living. I moved here 6 months ago for a job that sounded better when it was an offer letter and not a calendar full of meetings about other meetings. My private fear, the one I don't say out loud because it makes you sound melodramatic, is that my brain is going to betray me slowly and politely, not in a cinematic way. Just little malfunctions, forgotten words, misheard sounds, an email I swear I sent that never existed. My grandmother had dementia, and the first signs were tiny, almost funny. She put the TV remote in the fridge. She asked my mom why the neighbors kept walking in the attic. Everyone laughed until it wasn't funny. I rinsed my mug and watched the coffee swirl down the drain like I could rinse out the night too. At 9, my phone buzzed with a message. "Mara, you alive? Coffee later. You look like a ghost in yesterday's call." I stared at the screen longer than necessary, my thumb hovering. I considered typing. Weird question. Do you ever hear footsteps when you close your eyes? I pictured how that would land, especially over text, especially at 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. Instead, I wrote, alive. Barely. Didn't sleep. Coffee, yes. Her reply came fast. Mara, same place, 10:30. I agreed before I could overthink it. I showered, shaved, put on a hoodie that smelled faintly like detergent and the stale pizza I'd eaten on the couch Sunday night. I checked my locks twice on the way out, then told myself that was normal because everyone checks locks twice sometimes. In the hallway, someone's music thudded softly behind a door. A guy I didn't know, tall, dark hair, a lanyard around his neck, came out of the stairwell with a paper grocery bag. He nodded like we were both playing the role of neighbor. Morning, I said, because I'm the kind of person who says morning like it's a peace offering. He did a half smile. Hey. His eyes flicked to my door, then back to me. Not suspicious, just noticing. I walked down the stairs and out into the wet chill. Portland had that damp January smell, wet asphalt, coffee shop exhaust, cold cedar from somewhere that didn't make sense. Cars hissed by on slick streets. A bus sighed at the corner. I kept thinking about the sound, the way it only happened when my eyes closed, like my brain needed the dark to project something. At the coffee shop, Mara was already there by the window, elbows on the table, hands wrapped around a paper cup. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that looked accidental, but probably wasn't. She wore a black puffer jacket, even inside. She looked up as I walked in, and her face did that quick scan people do when they care, but don't want to make a big deal of it. Mara Dalka, 29, female, was the closest thing I had to a friend in Portland. We'd started the same week at the company and bonded over mutual confusion and the fact that we both hated the way people said circle back, like it meant something. You look terrible, she said, which is what she said when she was worried. Thanks, I said, sliding into the chair opposite her. You look like you slept. I did not, she said, but I have a face that lies. I wrapped my hands around my cup for warmth. The coffee shop smelled like steamed milk and cinnamon, and underneath it, wet wool from everyone's jackets. An espresso machine hissed like a restrained animal. Mara watched me for a beat. Okay, she said, leaning in slightly. What's going on? Real answer. I could have lied. I could have blamed work. I could have said I'd had a bad dream. All of those were true enough to pass. But the thing about being tired and freaked out is it makes honesty feel like relief. I'm hearing something in my apartment, I said quietly. Her eyebrows lifted, but she didn't laugh. Like pipes. I thought that, I said. It's footsteps. Mara didn't change her expression, just nodded slowly like she was collecting data. Footsteps where? In my room, I said. Then I added, because it was the part that made my throat tighten, but only when I close my eyes. She stared at me for a second, then glanced down at her coffee as if it might contain an answer. Okay, she said. That's specific. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you didn't sleep, she said, careful. And your brain is doing weird stuff. But also, she shrugged. Buildings are weird. People are weird. Could be something explainable. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Yeah, explainable. Mara took a sip, then said, "Do you have, like, a carbon monoxide detector?" I blinked. Yeah, I think so. You think so?" she repeated, unimpressed. "Ethan." I moved in, and there was one on the wall, I said. I didn't exactly test it. "Okay," she said, as if she'd just found the first rung on a ladder. Step 1, check that. Step 2, ask the building manager if anyone's been complaining about noises. Step 3, if you're still hearing it, we don't pretend it's nothing. I said, because something in me loosened at that word. She held my gaze. Yes, a barista called out an order. Someone laughed too loudly at a joke that didn't sound funny. Normal life pressed in around us, bright and casual. I sipped my coffee. It was hotter than I expected and burned my tongue. The pain was stupidly comforting. Mara reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "Text me your address," she said. "I'll come by tonight after work. We'll check your detector. We'll listen. Worst case, we annoy your neighbors, and you owe me a pastry." I hesitated. The rational part of me wanted to refuse, to keep this contained, to not make it real by letting another person into it. The other part, the part that had heard a step beside my bed, wanted witnesses. I looked at Mara, then at the window where the rain had started again, thin and persistent. "Tonight," I said, and just like that, we were making plans. Not to solve it yet, not to name it, just to take one step toward whatever came next. Mara came over that night with a tote bag and the kind of energy people bring when they're trying not to show they're nervous. It was just after 7. Outside, the rain had stopped, but everything still shone like it was holding its breath. I buzzed her in from the intercom, then stood in the middle of my apartment, feeling stupidly exposed, like the room itself was about to give me away. She knocked instead of just walking in, which I appreciated. "Home inspection time," she said, stepping inside and shaking water off her jacket. She looked around, eyes moving fast, but not alarmed. "Smells normal." "High praise," I said. Mara Dalka, 29, female, set her bag down by the table and pulled out a small flashlight and a phone charger. "I'm not assuming anything," she said, "but if we lose power, I don't want your phone dying." That landed heavier than she probably meant it to. Losing power hadn't even occurred to me. I nodded and plugged my phone in. The apartment looked the same as it had that morning. Same bars of streetlight across the floor. Same radiator ticking faintly. Same boxes I'd been meaning to unpack. If there was something wrong, it was doing a good job of blending in. "Show me where you sleep," Mara said. I led her to the bed. She crouched and ran her hand along the floor, feeling for loose boards. Pressed down near the radiator. Nothing squeaked. "Okay," she said. "Carbon monoxide detector. I pointed to the small white disc mounted near the ceiling by the kitchen. She stood on a chair, popped it open, and frowned. "Battery's old," she said. "Like really old. That's bad, right?" "It's not great," she said, already replacing it with one from her bag. The detector chirped once when she closed it. The sound made my shoulders jump. "Relax," she said quickly. "That's just the test beep." She pressed the test button. The alarm wailed, sharp and ugly, filling the apartment. My heart slammed into my throat. The noise cut off after a few seconds, leaving my ears ringing. "Okay," she said. "It works. That's good." She climbed down and checked her phone. "I want to leave it on for a bit. See if it does anything on its own." I nodded, trying to ignore the way my pulse hadn't slowed yet. We sat on opposite sides of the bed, shoes off, backs against the wall. Mara took out her phone and set it face up between us, screen recording on, microphone enabled. "Just in case," she said. "If you hear something, we'll have a record." "That makes me feel worse," I said. "Me too," she admitted. We talked for a while about safe things. Work gossip. A terrible client call she'd had that afternoon. The coffee shop down the street that always burned their pastries. The normal rhythm helped. The room settled around us. The radiator clicked. A car alarm went off somewhere and then stopped. At 8:14, Mara said, "Okay, show me." I lay down on my back. She stayed sitting, watching my face like she was afraid I'd vanish. "Eyes open first," she said, "just so we know baseline." I stared at the ceiling. The fan blades cast soft shadows. Nothing happened. "Okay," she said gently. "Whenever you're ready." I closed my eyes. At first, there was nothing. Just the blood rushing in my ears, louder than I liked. I waited, counting my breaths. Then scuff. It came from the left side of the bed, quiet, intentional. I opened my eyes. Mara's head snapped toward the sound at the exact same moment. "Did you?" she started. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded wrong. "You heard that?" She didn't answer right away. She was staring at the floor, flashlight already in her hand, beams slicing across the boards. "I heard something," she said carefully. "Not a step, more like scuff." This time, my eyes were open. It came from closer, right at the foot of the bed. Mara froze. The light shook in her hand. "That was real," she said. My stomach dropped, cold and heavy. "You heard it?" "Yes," she said. "I heard it." The carbon monoxide detector chirped. Once, not the test beep, the low battery warning. Mara swore under her breath and looked up. "That timing sucks." The chirp came again. "Regular now. Every 30 seconds. "I just replaced it," she said. "It shouldn't." The lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. The apartment fell into a darker dark, the streetlight outside suddenly too far away to help. The refrigerator cut off mid-hum. The radiator went quiet. "Okay," Mara said, too fast. "Okay." She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. I did the same. Two cones of light overlapped, shaky. That happens sometimes, I said. Power outages. Old building. The detector chirped again. Mara stood. I don't like that. I'll get the breaker, I said, already moving. The breaker box was in the hallway, just outside my door. I opened it, phone light bouncing off the walls. The hallway smelled stronger now, cleaner somehow, like cold air had been let in. I stepped out. The hall lights were out too. From somewhere above us, a door slammed. I jumped. Third floor, I said, forcing calm. Probably someone else checking their breaker. The breaker box door was already open. I frowned. That's weird. Mara leaned closer. You leave it open? No. Inside, the switches were all flipped to on. So why's the power out? She said. Before I could answer, there was movement at the far end of the hall. A shape. Someone holding a phone, its screen lighting their face from below. The tall guy from that morning stepped closer. Power's out, he said, unnecessarily. His voice echoed more than it should have. Yeah, Mara said, sharp. We noticed. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Old wiring happens. Another scuff echoed down the hallway, closer this time. Not from him, from behind us. Mara grabbed my arm. Hard. Ethan, she whispered. That wasn't us. The detector chirped again from inside my apartment, the sound threading through the dark like a timer. The guy's smile faded. You guys hear that too? I swallowed. My mind raced, grabbing at explanations. Rats. Pipes. Someone else is moving around, all of them thin. I think we should go back inside, I said. Mara nodded. And call someone, we turned. The scuff came again, right behind us now, close enough that I felt it through the soles of my feet. The complication hit all at once. No power, a malfunctioning detector, an unexplained sound that wasn't just in my head anymore, and a hallway full of blind spots. Mara tightened her grip. Ethan, she said low, we don't split up. And then, from inside my dark apartment, something shifted. Not a step. Something heavier. We didn't run. That was the first mistake. We stood there in the hallway, 3 adults with phone flashlights, and the shared instinct to pretend this was still a normal building problem that would resolve if we acted calm enough. The scuffing sound came again, softer now, somewhere near the stairwell. The tall guy, Evan, he finally said his name was 34. Male lifted his phone higher, angling the light down the corridor. Probably someone else, he said, like he was trying to convince himself. Or a dog. No dogs allowed, Mara said. Her voice stayed even, but her hand didn't loosen on my arm. Attempt 1. We checked for the obvious. Evan walked toward the stairwell first. The hallway was long and narrow, apartments lining one side, a low railing on the other that looked down into a dark central shaft where the stairs zigzagged. My place was about halfway down, the breaker box just outside it. The scuff sounded again from below, then stopped. Evan leaned over the railing, phone light cutting downward. "Hello," he called. His voice echoed strangely, bouncing up from the concrete. No answer. Mara moved to the breaker box again, flipping switches off and on with sharp clicks. Nothing happened. The detector chirped inside my apartment, patient and relentless. "Okay," she said. "So power's not coming back this way." I rubbed my eyes, gritty and sore. "We can go downstairs. See if it's the whole building." Another scuff, this time behind Evan. He spun, light whipping around. Nothing. My chest hurt, not pain exactly, more like pressure from breathing too shallow for too long. Attempt 2. We went downstairs. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete and old cigarettes. Emergency lights glowed faint red along the walls, enough to keep us from tripping. Our footsteps sounded too loud, overlapping each other in a way that made it hard to tell who was where. Halfway down the second flight, something scraped below us. Slow, dragging. Mara stopped short. I bumped into her. "That's not us," she whispered. I leaned over the railing. The bottom floor was darker, the emergency lights weaker. For a second, my brain supplied a shape there, crouched, waiting, and my heart surged so hard I tasted metal. Then Evan laughed, sharp and relieved. "Jesus." "It's a bike." Sure enough, a bicycle leaned against the wall, its kickstand half broken, so it shifted with every vibration, tire rubbing concrete. The scrape again, completely mundane. I let out a shaky breath. My legs felt rubbery. "That's our misdirection quota for the night," Mara said. "I don't want another one." On the ground floor, the glass front door showed the street outside lit and normal. Cars passed. A bodega across the road glowed warm and yellow. Power was out inside, but the city didn't care. A woman stood by the mailboxes with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing. "Yes," she was saying. "The whole building. No, I don't smell gas. No alarms except one upstairs." My stomach dropped. Upstairs. "That's mine," I said. She glanced at me. "Your detector going off too. Low battery," Mara said automatically. "Still," the woman said. "Building management told me to call it in if anything weird happened." Attempt 3. We called for help. Outside, the rain had started again. Light, but cold. Mara dialed the non-emergency line while Evan talked to the woman. I stood under the awning, arms wrapped around myself, watching steam rise from the sewer grate like breath. Mara listened, nodded, frowned. Yes, no visible fire, no gas smell, power outage. One CO detector chirping intermittently. She hung up. "They'll send someone to check," she said. "Fire department. But they're backed up. Could be 40 minutes. 40 minutes felt like a long time to leave my apartment alone with whatever was making that sound. "I should turn the detector off," I said. "At least stop the noise." Mara hesitated. "If it's just low battery, fine. But if it's not," I finished. Yeah, we went back inside. The stairwell felt tighter on the way up, like the walls had shifted while we were gone. On the third floor, the scuffing started again as soon as we stepped out. It wasn't behind us this time. It was ahead, near my door. Evan stopped. "Okay," he said quietly. "That's new." My key shook in my hand. I fumbled it, cursed, tried again. The lock turned with a loud click that echoed too much. Inside, the detector chirped immediately, louder in the dark. My phone light swept the room. Everything looked wrong in that way familiar spaces do when the lights are out, edges softened, corners deeper. "Stay here," Mara said, and moved toward the detector with purpose. The scuff came from the other side of the bed. I froze. Evan's light jerked toward it. Nothing. Mara stood on the chair again, fingers quick despite the shaking light. She popped the detector open and pulled the battery free. Silence. The quiet pressed in heavy. Then something shifted near the closet. I took a step back and hit the table, hard enough to knock the mug off. It shattered on the floor, ceramic snapping like a gunshot. My heart went wild. Evan swore. "What the hell was that?" "Me," I said. "Just me." Mara exhaled slowly. "Okay, no more sudden moves." She knelt, careful, and swept her light along the base of the closet door. There was a thin gap at the bottom, dark, still. She reached for the handle. "Wait," I said. My voice cracked. "I didn't hear it open earlier." "That doesn't mean." The handle turned easily. The door swung inward. Nothing inside but coats and the moving box I'd shoved in there weeks ago because it didn't fit anywhere else. The box lid was half crushed, one corner torn. "What's in that?" Evan asked. "Old stuff," I said. "Books, files." The scuff came again, from inside the box. Mara snapped the light down. The box shifted, barely. Another soft scrape. Rats, my brain screamed. Mice, that had to be it. Evan crouched and grabbed the box lid. "I'm opening it." He didn't wait for permission. Inside, paper, folders, my old laptop bag, and beneath them, a man's shoe. We all recoiled at once. I hit the bed this time, breath knocked out of me. Mara swore, loud and uncontrolled. The shoe twitched. "Hey," a voice whispered from inside the box. "Please." Everything after that happened too fast. Evan shouted. Mara backed toward the door. I scrambled upright, vision tunneling. The man pushed the lid up, gasping. He was young, thin, face gray with sweat, eyes wild. His socked foot dragged against the cardboard. "My leg," he said. I fell. I couldn't get out. The scuffing. The dragging heel. The explainable horror hit me like nausea. Before any of us could move, the hallway lights flickered back on. And from downstairs, sirens wailed too close, too fast. Mara looked at me, eyes sharp with something new. "We're not backing out of this now," she said, "because whoever he was, and however long he'd been there, the point of no return had already passed." The sirens cut off outside, sudden enough to make the silence snap. For a second, nobody moved. The man in the box, Later, I'd learn his name was Lucas, 27, male, kept his hands up like he expected to be hit. His leg was twisted under him at a wrong angle, the ankle swollen and purpling fast. He was breathing too hard, shallow, the way people do when panic is riding pain like a wave. "Don't," he said again. "Please don't." "I'm not going to," Mara said, steady, but loud enough to be heard over his breathing. "No one is." Evan hovered near the door, phone still in his hand, knuckles white. "Fire department's here," he said. "And cops. That should have been the end of it." It wasn't. Lucas's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the sound of boots on stairs, voices echoing up the shaft. His whole body tensed. "No," he whispered. "I can't." He tried to push himself out of the box. It was a terrible idea. His injured leg caught, and he cried out. A sharp, involuntary sound that scraped something raw inside my chest. He lost his balance and pitched forward. I lunged without thinking, grabbing his jacket, and we both went down hard. My shoulder slammed into the floor. Pain flared bright and immediate. Lucas screamed again, clutching his leg, face contorting. "Ethan," Mara shouted. "I've got him," I said, though my arm was already going numb. Lucas thrashed, wild and desperate. He wasn't strong, not really, but panic gives you leverage. His heel scraped against the floor, that same sound, closer than it had ever been, right in my ear. "Stop," Mara yelled. "You're hurting yourself." "They can't see me like this," he said, voice breaking. "I just needed somewhere to hide." I didn't know the apartment door flew open. "Fire department," a voice called. "Anyone inside?" Red light strobed through the doorway, washing the room in pulses. Boots thudded. Radios crackled. Lucas froze. His grip loosened. His eyes filled, glassy and unfocused. "I didn't mean to," he said, to no one in particular. "I just needed to sleep. I couldn't walk. I heard someone come in and hands were on him then, firm and practiced. A firefighter knelt, assessing his leg with quick, gentle movements. Another guided me back, pressing a gloved hand to my shoulder. "You hurt?" the firefighter asked. "My shoulder," I said. "I think we'll check it." A police officer stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, the overturned box, the scattered papers, the man on the floor. His face didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Sir," he said to Lucas, "what were you doing in this apartment?" Lucas closed his eyes. For a split second, the room was quiet enough that I thought I heard it again. The scuff, the drag. Muscle memory, maybe. My brain filling in the gap. "I fell in the stairwell," Lucas said hoarsely. "Earlier. The lights were out. I heard someone unlock a door and he swallowed. I crawled. I couldn't make it down. I thought I could rest. I didn't think anyone would. You hid in a box," the officer said. Lucas nodded, shame flooding his face. "I didn't want to scare anyone." Mara made a small, broken sound behind me. They took Lucas out on a stretcher. His leg was worse than it looked, compound fracture, the the paramedic said quietly. He'd need surgery. The officer took our statements while firefighters checked the apartment for gas, for wiring issues, for anything else that could explain the night away. Everything came back mundane. Old building, power surge, a broken kickstand, a man who made a bad choice in pain, an ambulance door slammed. The siren started again, fading into the wet night. When the apartment finally went quiet, it felt too big. I sat on the edge of the bed, arm in a sling, shoulder throbbing in time with my pulse. The box lay collapsed in the closet, useless now. My things were scattered like evidence. Mara sat beside me. She didn't touch me, not yet. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. My voice shook on the word. Evan hovered near the table, hands shoved into his pockets. "I should go," he said. "If they need me, they've got my number." "Thanks for staying," Mara said. He nodded, then hesitated. "You couldn't have known," he said to me, "about any of it." After he left, the apartment felt smaller, every sound amplified. The radiator clicked back to life. The fridge hummed. Normal sounds reclaimed. Mara finally leaned in and rested her forehead against my shoulder, careful of the injury. I let myself breathe her in coffee, rain, something clean. "You weren't losing your mind," she said softly. I stared at the floor where the scuff marks were faintly visible, curved lines in the dust where Lucas's heel had dragged. "No," I said, but it felt like I was. That was the cost, I realized. Not the bruise blooming under the sling, not the paperwork or the police report. It was the way my brain had learned, in a single night, how thin the line was between imagination and reality, and how easily it could blur when you were tired and scared. Later, after Mara left, and the building settled into its usual noises, I lay back down. I didn't turn off the light. When I closed my eyes, there were no footsteps, but my body still waited for them. The sling chafed by morning. I woke up on my back with my arm pinned at a careful angle, the room washed in early gray. The apartment smelled faintly like disinfectant and wet cardboard. Someone, Mara, probably had stacked my scattered papers into uneven piles on the table. The closet door was shut again. The box was gone. For a few seconds, before the memory slid into place, I listened. There were no footsteps, just the building doing what it always did at dawn. A distant shower turning on, the elevator cable whining, the radiator clearing its throat. I stayed still longer than necessary, letting my body learn the quiet again. At 8, my phone buzzed, a voicemail, then another. I let them sit while I brushed my teeth one-handed and tried not to wince at my reflection, which looked older than it had 2 days ago. When I finally listened, it was building management, apologetic and formal, asking me to call back about the incident. The second was a number I didn't recognize, police, probably leaving a polite message about a follow-up statement. The third buzz was a text from Mara. On my way with coffee. Don't argue. I didn't. She arrived with a paper bag and the careful smile people wear when they don't know how fragile the room still is. She set everything down without comment, then stood there, hands tucked into her jacket pockets, eyes scanning like she was checking for exits. "You sleep?" she asked. "Some," I said. "Light on." "Good." We sat at the table. She slid a coffee toward me, the lid already loosened so I didn't have to wrestle with it. That small consideration nearly undid me. "Fire department cleared the building," she said, filling the silence with useful facts. "Management's filing an incident report. They're fixing the stairwell lights, and they are apologizing a lot." "I noticed," I said. "They left 2 voicemails." She nodded. "Lucas is out of surgery." The name landed softly, like a dropped coin. "They think he'll walk," she continued. "Eventually, he asked about you." I took a sip. The coffee tasted normal. That felt like a gift. "What did you say?" "That you didn't want him hurt," she said. "That you were scared." "Both true." "Did he?" "Yeah," she said. "He's cooperating. They're not charging him with breaking and entering. Medical emergency." The officer said that's not uncommon, especially in buildings like this. "Like this," I echoed, looking around. She followed my gaze. Converted offices, long hallways, blind spots. We ate in companionable quiet. My shoulder throbbed dully, manageable with the pills the urgent care doctor had given me at midnight. I'd refused anything stronger. The idea of sleeping through sounds felt suddenly dangerous. By late morning, I'd given my statements, signed a few forms, and scheduled a follow-up for my shoulder. The normal bureaucracy of aftermath had a calming effect, like being guided back onto a known road. Even the paperwork had weight and edges and places to initial. It insisted on reality. Mara left around noon for a meeting, promising to check in later. Evan texted once, "You holding up?" And I answered with a thumbs up I didn't fully mean. I spent the afternoon doing small, grounding things, washing the mug shards off the floor, retaping the bottom of the closet door where it had scraped, testing the carbon monoxide detector with a new battery until it beeped like it was supposed to. Around 4, I stood in the hallway and looked at the breaker box. Management had taped a note to it. "Do not open maintenance." The tape fluttered slightly in the draft. I resisted the urge to lift it, to check again, to confirm the switches were still where they belonged. That night, when the building settled and the rain returned, I made a choice. I turned off the light. I lay down and let the room go dark, the way I used to without thinking. The ceiling disappeared. The corners softened. My body tensed, waiting for the math to start. I closed my eyes. Nothing happened. I counted 10 breaths, then 20. My heart slowed, inch by inch. The absence of sound was so complete it felt loud. Sleep came in pieces. I dreamed of hallways that ended where they should, of boxes that were just boxes, In the morning, there was a letter slid under my door. Plain envelope. Inside, a note written in careful, uneven handwriting. Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Thank you for helping me even when you were afraid. I sat on the floor and read it twice. I folded it once and tucked it into a drawer with other things I wasn't ready to throw away. Life resumed in the way it does, incremental, slightly altered. The stairwell lights stayed on. The building replaced the kickstand on the bike downstairs. I learned to deadbolt my door without feeling ridiculous. I unpacked the last box because the idea of anything sealed and unknown in my apartment made my skin itch. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm especially tired, my brain still tries to supply the sound. A phantom scuff in the white noise of the city. When that happens, I open my eyes and name what I can see. The bookshelf, the door, the faint glow under the blinds. It works, mostly. There's a mark on the floor by the bed that won't quite scrub out. A pale arc where a heel dragged again and again. I could sand it, probably. Refinish the boards. I haven't. Not because I'm afraid of footsteps. Because every once in a while, I close my eyes and remember how real it felt. And how easily ordinary things can line up into something terrifying if you're tired enough, scared enough, human enough. And I like knowing exactly where that line is. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming.